Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates. I'm your decluttering cheerleader, and you are listening to episode 298. Today, I am welcoming back Amy Slenker-Smith. Amy is a life and business coach who helps women simplify their homes, habits, and businesses. A former professional organizer, she believes true organization begins with owning less. And you might remember her from episode 257, where we talked about motivation and decluttering, but today we're having a very different conversation. Amy is here to share a deeply personal experience. Over the past few months, she lost both of her in-laws within about 2.5 months of each other. And because of what she does professionally, she had spent the years before their passing helping them downsize from a 3,400 square foot home to a smaller apartment. And she is going to walk us through what that looked like, the hard conversations that had to happen, and what she wishes more families knew before they find themselves in crisis mode. So we are also getting into the stuff behind the stuff, the emotions, the family dynamics, and the practical strategies that actually work when time is short. So even if you don't have a lot of time and you find yourself under a time crunch, you're going to find some really helpful information here as well. This one might hit close to home for a lot of you, but I promise there is also hope and some really helpful takeaways. If you're not already subscribed, hit that follow button so you don't miss an episode, and then come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm at wannabeclutterfree, and Amy will be there as well, so we can chat with you about this episode. And you can find show notes and links at wannabeclutterfree.com/298. All right, let's dive in. Well, hi, Amy. Welcome back to Wanna Be Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing well. Thank you. It's always a great honor to be here and for you to have me a second time. Just very grateful. Thank you.
You're very sweet. I'm thrilled to have you back. Our last conversation was fantastic. For those who are new to the show or didn't catch the other one, we were talking about how it wasn't motivation when it comes to decluttering. That was episode 257, but we are going to have a completely different talk today.
Yes, we are.
We are going to be talking about an experience you had in your life and how that has transpired. So, but before we get in, I'm just leaving a little intrigue there. Why don't you tell listeners about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, for those who don't know me, Amy Slenker-Smith, I have this little space on the internet called Simply Enough, simplyenough.net. And I am a life and business coach for women who want less but better. And you're probably like, what the heck does less with better but better mean? And what I have found in my evolution from professional organizer to decluttering coach to decluttering and life coach is that there's a lot of what I call stuff behind the stuff. And that's going to come up in our conversation today for sure. You're going to hear it. So that is what has evolved my coaching from just straight, like, let's figure out how to organize a garage and what are the steps you need to take to what's holding you back from even getting started? What's the emotion? What's the maybe family of origin history, things of that nature. So that evolved. And then like any great entrepreneur, it evolved a little further. And I found myself, I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary of being in business in April, which is pretty amazing and shocking all at the same time. And so I find myself talking to women who are in a new season and they're like, hey, I think I want to try this entrepreneur thing, or maybe they want a side hustle. And it's the picking my brain. What have you learned? And it turns out I've learned a thing or two in 10 years. And so I am now coaching female entrepreneurs because I have a heart for that. And the way that they look at business is very different. And I love that. And I love helping them just get out of their own way and take that first step. And so, that's what I do. And that's kind of the short of it, long and short of it.
Well, congrats. I feel like that's different than the last time you were here. So that's a new evolution for you, yes?
It is. There's, the decluttering coaching was interesting because my coach said to me at one time, he said, I don't know that decluttering coach is quite accurate. And I thought,
right.
well, what do you mean it's not accurate? He goes, I just don't think it's quite encompassing of what you do. And it turns out he was right. He's literally been right about everything. And so having a coach yourself as a coach is a must. And so I now understand. And I've also listened to enough podcasts and read enough books to know that as an entrepreneur, your business on day one is going to look complete. Of course, it's going to look different in 10 years. And so there was, that part of me that's like, well, wait a sec. Is this a space where can I really do this? That imposter syndrome that pops up for
Yeah,
all of us,
always.
especially women. And it did. I'd be, it'd be inauthentic for me to say it doesn't pop up. It does. But no, turns out, yeah, I do know how to help women get businesses started, and
Awesome.
especially professional organizers. And that how fun it has been. It's been so fun. Like
Very cool.
I'm blessed. I'm really, really blessed beyond belief. So
That's
thank you
awesome.
for that. So
Yes,
it is different. It is
of
different. Yeah.
course. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that's not actually what we're talking about today. So,
It is not. No, it is not.
but I like the background because I love that I think there is a thread of growth and the willingness to change and look at different aspects of ourselves. And I think that's kind of the through line with what you do and with what I do. Right? We're helping people uncover more about themselves. And so today though, we are going to be looking at something really tender. It's a very lived
Yeah.
experience that you had. So can
Yeah.
you share what the last few months have been like for you personally and what we're here to talk about today?
Yeah. So I think, Deanna, you and I have some similarities just in terms of we're in this season where we have kids, and I've launched one into the world. So I have a sophomore in college. He's my one and only. But what's interesting about when you get to that point is that something else comes up. And
Mm,
it's really hard for me to talk to anyone who
interesting.
isn't launching children, who isn't in this same situation that I'm in that we're going to talk about today, which is aging parents. And
Mm,
so it seems like just the timing of launching kids out into the world or as they're getting older, then your attention starts to shift to helping your parents, whether it's health, whether it's physical demands of their home and helping them manage their home. And so, the shortest version possible, I guess, of what's happened for us in the last few months is that both of my husband's parents passed away within about 2.5 months of each other. And I feel like I'm probably just enough removed from it to talk about it. He's not yet. It's
yeah.
still very much so, very much he's not there yet, and that's completely fair. And as I was thinking about this conversation today, I was even thinking, okay, this will be really still pretty raw.
Yeah.
That we are not that far removed from it. We're not that far removed from the holidays at the time of this recording.
Mm-hmm.
And so what has transpired for us in over the last 5 years is watching their declining health, feeling torn between, helping a kid graduate high school and helping them downsize, which I had the great honor of doing. And then as my father-in-law entered hospice, there was even more of a reality. Okay, now we've got a two-bedroom apartment to that's going to need to be reduced again, and then a lot quicker than we expected. Um, they were both gone,
Yeah.
and we had to basically undo um, all the things that were their life, and that's the best way I can think of to describe it is that there's the practical side of me that in the moment could say to my husband and to my brother-in-law who was helping and my niece who was helping, like I could say to them, okay, let's remember that all of these things are what mom and dad needed. I called them mom and dad. I never didn't call them mom and dad, to live their life. That does not mean we have to take it all into our home to live our lives. We have the things we need to live our lives. And so
Right.
just as a way to try and help them to not be consumed by the guilt of driving carloads of stuff away, which is
Yeah.
the reality of what we did for just a two-bedroom apartment. And the blessing they gave us of it not being more than that is just the greatest gift I think they gave to their children. So I have to, say hats off to them.
Yeah.
So that's the short version. We can get into more details wherever
Yeah.
you want to go with that, but
Sure.
that's the long and short of it. So
Sure. Well, first off, all my condolences. Obviously, it is never easy to lose a loved one, and then to lose both of them in such a short amount of time. I mean, I'm very sorry for your loss. It's very difficult. I know.
yeah, yeah,
Thankfully, I don't know from experience, but we lost my father-in-law about 15 years ago, almost 15 years. And it was our experience for that is still going to be completely different than your experience because my mother-in-law was 61. There's a big difference between her being 61 and this coming, completely derailing her retirement plans and what she thought the rest of her life was going to be like, but still her having the capacity and ability to do a lot of this decluttering and downsizing on her own. Um,
right.
so I totally understand, but yes, the losing, declining health very rapidly in the hospice and God bless hospice. I mean, let me just say that to anybody who's
I
like, huh? They are amazing. So if you ever find yourself where you're questioning whether you should reach out to hospice, please do. I just want to put that PSA out there to everybody first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that's a really, I think it's worth like pulling that thread a little bit because I think it's a really misunderstood um service offering, and it was offered at my in-laws moved apartments in 2020. We downsized them to from 3,400 square feet to 1,200 square feet, which took a huge burden off of the family just
Yeah.
by doing that. And thankfully, with what I do, I was able to walk them through that literally for 9 months. We were working together for 9 months. And but when my father-in-law's health had declined to a point that he was not wanting to, what they were recommending was this surgery or this procedure or this
Mm-hmm.
test, and all of that came with great risk. I mean, he lived a wonderful life. He was 91 when he passed away. And so, but as those years went on, everything came with much greater risk, and he said, I don't want to do that. And so that is kind of when we got to the point of that's the definition of hospice. And you can be in hospice for way longer than just 2 or 3 weeks. And I think that's what most people associate with it.
Right.
But what a gift they were, to our entire family to have someone like checking on him. He no longer had to go to doctor's appointments. All the medicines were delivered. My mother-in-law didn't have to man the phone as his
Right.
full-time secretary because we watched that. Like she was the calendar person and the doctors and the pharmacist and the phone calls and that's what was, I think, exhausting, for both of them. I know it was exhausting. We watched it firsthand, but hospice just brings down like the level
Bring
of
down the
everything.
temperature. Yeah, it just kind of brings it
Yeah.
down to
Yeah.
manageable for sure. And
Yeah.
having
It
someone there
was.
to ask the questions to, and like somebody that's like honest with you and not, I mean, God bless doctors. I love them too. But I think their goal is to provide hope and potential for resolve and an outcome that we all want. But that's not always our reality. And it's really nice to have someone there that can just be there for you through a time that you don't imagine happening and you don't want to happen. So anyway, thank you for letting us get on that moment because it doesn't come up often on the show, and it wasn't anything I ever in my 30s ever expected to know about. But if you don't know, you don't know, and it's something you should know. So thank you for letting me have a moment about hospice.
Yeah, I think anyone who wants to know more should call either one of us, like, frankly. Like, I'd be happy
Absolutely.
to talk about the support to family, and we could
Yes.
spend an entire episode on that. But yeah, I'd be happy
Yeah,
to go deeper with anybody who has questions about it. So
for sure. For sure. So, okay, talk us through though that first time you were helping them navigate from their large house to this two-bedroom apartment, because I think the fact that you got to do this in steps is amazing. What a wonderful gift for everybody, as you were saying. So, how do we start that process? If we're sitting here going, okay, I'm going to find myself in this sandwich generation, I was not really looking forward to finally having an empty nest and then going to do something else. But if that's the reality that's coming, I might as well prepare for it. So how can we start having these conversations, or what should we do? What did you learn that was you didn't expect, or any little nuggets you can share with us there?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure I learned a lot because I think I knew what I was getting myself into,
Right.
but I come at it from a very different view. I mean, being a professional organizer at that point for, 5 years, I knew the volume, I knew the time, I knew the decision fatigue, I knew the reality of it was a 75% reduction in stuff because their 3,400 square foot home was very, very full. I mean, they lived there for 20 years. They had brought at the more years, the more stuff that is brought in,
Mm-hmm.
and not the same amount leaves. And that's just human nature. We fill the space that we have. And so that was I think the first thing that we really that I really had to say was, hey, okay, here's the math. And my father-in-law was very funny. He goes, well, the basement doesn't count. And I said, "Well, it does count if it's full of stuff." And which it is, which
Yeah.
it is. So the percentage is reduction. And the reason that we went like a little more than the actual math is because like I want you to be comfortable in this new space. I want you to have safety. I want you to have we want room to grow because someday there'll be walkers, and there were walkers. Someday there will be reduced mobility and safety concerns and tripping hazards. And so I have a woman actually I'm working with right now, and she is focused on helping people to age in place.
Mm.
And these are the kinds of things that she talks about. And I think that the biggest surprise to me, if there was a surprise, was when we did get to this season of them having the mobility issues and all the different equipment and whatnot. I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, these door jams are all bigger. Like
Mm.
everything here where they live now is meant for this to happen. Whereas
Right.
if they had aged in place and they had stayed in their townhome, we would have had to make some of those changes. Like, even though physically, square foot wise, it was much bigger, it was not bigger in the way it needed to be bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so while we could have moved them to the first level and there were lots of things that we could have done, what happens when people move to some kind of an assisted living facility or graduated living facility where they can go and grow with it as their needs change is that they're ready from day one. Like when they got there,
Right.
they did not have walkers, they did not have mobility issues, but the doors were wider. And just
Right.
some of those things, that the shower was designed properly, the height of toilets was appropriate, the height of sinks was appropriate. And that's the piece that was most surprising to me. So I guess there was one surprise. It wasn't so much the stuff, it was
Mm-hmm.
really the better situation that they moved into physically and from a safety perspective. That for all the family not being as nearby, most of the family was at least an hour and a half away.
Mm-hmm.
eh, that we had some confidence in their safety, which was an additional gift beyond just the downsizing of the stuff. So,
Yes. I think if you can think of it of how you think about your children, right? You want your children to be safe. And as they're safe going out in the world, do you feel more confident and comfortable throughout your day? Same thing, right?
yeah.
If you know
Yep.
that they're safe and they're, comfortable, you're more confident through your day, and it allows you the bandwidth to do the things you need to do. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. How did you convince your father-in-law to include the basement?
Oh, with a lot of mango vodka, if I'm being honest.
Oh, man
Um,
after my own heart.
yeah, yeah. So I guess the one of the silver linings to the pandemic at the time when I was doing this is that um, my husband was working in the office one week and out of the office one week. So we were able to go up there
Okay.
once like the state would allow you to travel in, and we had the benefit of we were technically working. I was working in the state of Pennsylvania, so we were able to do that a little quicker maybe than most. But, I spent a lot of extended nights and weeks there, and we enjoyed some evenings over pineapple fried rice, and yes, mango vodka was my beverage of choice in the evenings. We played a lot of pinochle, which is something that the four of us did, and my father-in-law was my partner, and my mother-in-law was my husband's partner, and so pinocle's not the same anymore, I will be honest.
Mm,
That's one
yeah.
thing we really do struggle with. But to answer your question, how did I convince? Um, so I would credit my mother-in-law more than me on really a lot of this. So she was the one who observed his declining health quicker and his
Mm-hmm.
safety, and knowing her limitations for what she could do, because she was older than, like you had expressed, your
Right.
mother-in-law was in her 60s. She was getting older too, and she's like, there are things I can't, if you fall, I can't help.
Right.
The only option is 911, and really seeing the safety. She saw that first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you and I would recommend when we're wanting to convince other people to downsize and declutter their stuff, you start with your own stuff.
Right.
And so in their home, I just started working with her. And we didn't talk about the basement, we didn't talk about his closet, we didn't talk about the office and all the things that we needed to talk about. Kind of let him, get started with that in his own way. But to her credit, she was ready after about 2 weeks. Like, we had done her clothing, we had done her bathroom, we had done all the furniture, we'd identify what was coming, what was leaving, what was, all the things, what needed to be sold. She was ready. And then the rest of the time, we spent on the common spaces like the kitchen, and we enlisted. This is when enlisting the family,
Yeah.
enlisting his sons, I think was the right thing to do. So my husband and one of his brothers spent a lot of time in the basement. I was the project manager in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. I was the one who said, okay, let's focus on this category and this space. Because when you looked at a basement full of all kinds of different categories of things, it was
Yeah.
so overwhelming to everyone. And I'm like, okay, for this weekend, this is what we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
And there were certain items that family members were taking. And so we, okay, you're here for, and you're taking these things. So we're going to just work on this category of stuff for this weekend.
Yeah.
And found that to be pretty successful. That being said, I think where most people get in trouble is they don't allow themselves enough time. So
Mm-hmm.
so I knew that this was gonna take a move to do decluttering right is a year to 2 years. You need to give yourself that much time if at all possible. And so many times I get a call in January that they're putting the house on the market in the spring. I'm like, well, that's gonna be hard, and you just can't make quite as good of decisions. A
Okay.
deadline is helpful. And so, after 9 months, we were surprised that an apartment came available for them earlier than we expected. And so it gave us that last push for the last 3 months, which was okay. Now we do have a date that the house is going in the market. Now we do have a move date. And that's how we ultimately, I ultimately got my father-in-law on board in the end was that. And also some hard conversations, if I'm being honest, because I don't want to gloss over that.
Yeah.
There were not easy conversations. And some of the conversations in the end were, hey, you making decisions is standing between me and going home to my family.
Mm.
Like like
Interesting.
like that's the reality. I'm not going to leave until this is done and until you are moved safely. And that's what I wanted to do for my husband. That's what I wanted to do for his family. That's what I wanted to do for mom and dad, because that's how I felt about them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I feel like it was such an honor that they even asked me to do it. Like they were the ones who initiated the conversation to say, "Hey, we need your help."
Yeah.
They knew that of anyone, I was the right person to do it for obvious reasons. And so that was a great honor. But at the same time, it reached a point of, okay, like you're the last stop. We've done every other space. And now we're left with your office and your clothing and your bedroom. So we gotta take care of that. And that was the hard conversation
Hmm.
that Steve and I had, was to say it's time for you to make decisions. Like, and he resonated with that. After a period of time, it was not something I could have said at the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Right.
It would have rushed decisions, bad decisions would have been made. But through it all, my project plan on going by category, like the very pragmatic, practical ways, certainly worked. And what I think that most people lack is that. And so what bubbles up first is these emotional conversations, like, hey, they end up, yelling and arguing with their family, like, just make a decision.
Yeah.
And even with the perfect plan in place, even with a professional doing it, we still had those. We still
Hmm.
had those. Um, so to say that it was easy, it was not. But to say that if you have the time and if you can impart to your family what a gift it is they're giving you in the long run, and if you can impart upon them that this they are keeping you from, in my instance, they were keeping me from getting
Yeah.
home to my family who did need me after 9 months. They needed me to
Right.
stay home. They
Yeah.
they they needed me to be done. So that's a long answer to your question way back when. So hopefully that
Sure.
made sense.
Well, and I think that's why we're having this conversation today, is to hopefully give people more time, to let people know that this is a project, that it's something that's going to take a while. And so it's not something that, I mean, if you have to, of course, you can cram it into 3 months if that's the only option you have. But if
Right.
you don't have to, then maybe we can start having some conversations now. For those, though, that are in this really time crunch, they're like, I wish I would have found you a while ago, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And now I'm under the gun. What tips do you have for them?
So I think one of the things that a lot of people try to do with a move and a downsize is they have this desire to sell a lot of stuff. And I would say
Mm,
the first thing is, if your timeline is
yeah.
short, you've lost the time to sell. Early on in the process, I asked my in-laws to identify things they knew they wanted to sell. We talked about things that were going based on the space. I mean, the space was only so big. So there were two beds, there were two chairs, there was a kitchen table. It was very specific what was going, and what was left, they had a desire to sell. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I will help you sell all of this. $3,500 later on the Facebook Marketplace. We did a great job, but
Yeah.
we had a long runway.
Yeah.
And so, as attractive as that $3,500 might sound to someone right now, that was over 6 months. And so, I think if you have a short timeline, the first thing that you have to abandon is the idea that you're going to sell and make money on furniture. Uh,
Hmm.
the resale market on furniture is very challenging. It's discouraging. It's disheartening because there is so much excess in the world in the first place. So
Yeah.
you're going to get pennies on the dollar for what you paid for it. This was, like I said, a 3,400 square foot home. And over a course of 6 months, yeah, we did pretty well. But if you don't have a year
Yeah.
runway, if you don't
Yeah.
have, someone who it can be their full-time job like me, to manage the sales, to manage the scammers, to manage the conversations, to, line
Right.
up people to come safely to my in-laws' home, and all of that, then I think the first thing you've got to abandon is the idea of selling.
Hmm.
And what I also encourage people to think about is that no money is leaving your house when you give away that expensive china hutch that you paid thousands of dollars for. The money left a long time ago.
Right.
And what matters more now is that you find someone who come take it for free, because you're saving the cost of having it hauled away. You will reach a point in the end where you're just needing to haul away furniture. And we did still have a truckload of furniture that had to be hauled away. But I think that's the number one thing is they've got to abandon. And then identifying what will fit in the new space, to
Mm,
the extent that you know it. And again, back on the furniture thing, it's tough if you don't know where you're going because
right.
furniture fits differently in every home. You might actually be moving to a bigger home, but the furniture will still fit differently and maybe not
Mm-hmm.
the same way. So I always
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to be very judicious about how much of that they take. And
Yeah.
then we just started working like category by category. I think that little side tables like multiply in the night. There were We brought them all together. I did this is what I did with the categories. I'm like, "Okay, we have an end table by the couch or by the chairs, and we have a side table by the 2 beds in these rooms," and there were 17 side tables to choose
My
from.
gosh. Wow. Wow. That's a lot of side tables.
It was a lot of side tables. So the 17 side tables all brought together in one room, it's like, "Okay, which ones are your favorites? Let's
Yeah.
choose the best of the best." The same with artwork. You're gonna have fewer walls.
Right.
And the last thing that you wanna do is have a whole bunch of artwork just, leaning against a wall in a closet because your closets
Yeah.
are gonna be smaller. And
Right.
so big pieces of artwork you've got to be really selective about because you're gonna have fewer of those. So we just
Yeah.
started working like category by category. Plants is one that people are surprised by how much
Hmm.
space plants take up. So if you love plants in your home, I think that's wonderful. But you do also have to think about how many of those you're going to take. So just category by category and having that objective number to say, okay, 75% is our goal. We're
Right.
reducing the coffee mugs by 70% or 75%. We're reducing my shoes by 75%. We're reducing my sweaters by 75%. That will get you to a much better solution. People always say, well, what if I
Right.
get rid of something I wanted? Like, I promise you can count on 5 fingers. I can count on 5 fingers in 20 years the number of
Yep.
things I've thought about again. I wouldn't say I have regret. I would say I've thought about again and thought, "Do I could use that. Meh, okay. I'm alright that I don't have it." So, hopefully that was a little bit of practical, advice, but if you want more on that, we
Yeah.
can we can pull the thread further on that.
Oh, no, that was great. I think what you were saying there about the category by category is fantastic. And I think we're always surprised by when we put everything together, the volume of it, because you think, oh, you just forget it was tucked away in this room, it was nestled under something else, and you don't really realize that all these things have accumulated over the years, and it's just so easy to do. So don't ever get down on yourself if you find yourself with 17 side tables and you're like, wow, how the heck did that happen? It just does. But I
It
love
does.
the idea of the reducing by an actual number amount. So then you can say, okay, we have 20 mugs. I'm getting rid of 75 of those. So which 5 do I want to keep? It makes it so much easier to say instead of, you know, what are my favorite mugs or which mug could I use? Because everything's useful. Everything could be used. You obviously bought it for a reason at some point. Yeah, that was really helpful. I think that's a really great way to start. Yeah.
There's another thing I was thinking about with my in-laws and their generation that I think is relevant to talk about is books, CDs, and DVDs.
Mm. Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so those 3 categories, I actually had conversations with them about, okay, how is it that you watch TV? How do you watch movies? How do
Right.
you listen to music? How do you read? And even at their age, they both had Kindles.
Hmm.
They tended to use their Alexa for music, and they had streaming services. And so I said, these are 3 categories, the books, the CDs, and the DVDs, that you really wouldn't need to take any of them. and you are limited on flat surfaces, you're limited on space. And so I cannot say that I was successful in them not moving any books or any CDs or any DVDs. So,
Hey,
but I was successful.
75%.
We went to 75%. Yes, we were successful at reducing. And there was this funny story where I was like, hey, we were telling the story about how I was like, don't you use your Alexa? And I'm like, don't you just say, hey, Alexa, play like blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that's actually a song. And so the Alexa in the room started playing that. And
Know that song, I think.
it's very funny.
Na, 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 blah, 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 blah. Is that the song?
I don't know. It was
Oh my
really,
God, I think it's the song. I think my daughter and I stumbled upon this song, and I actually kind of love it if that's the song. So check it out, everyone.
you will have to go check it out. But it was very funny as I was giving that, don't you do that? And then the song started playing. I was
It's
like,
not a
oh,
song my parents would like, so. But my daughter loves it. She's 12.
it would not have been a song they would have ever played, but it was really funny in that moment. So, so yeah, so it turns out, and I think the message there is like just finding a way to gently talk to them about, hey, how is it that you guys do things? How do you function in your home? What do you need access to? We had the same conversation when we got to the kitchen about, the weight of some of the dishes and the frying pans and the cast iron pans, and
Mhm.
just they're like, we don't really use those anymore because they're too heavy. Okay,
I've
no
gotten rid of
problem.
my cast iron pan because it was too heavy. So I hear you. I cannot imagine having that in my 90s, 80s, 90s. No.
Well, and the loveliest thing in that situation, because my husband loves to cook, is that, my father-in-law said, I haven't used this. I think the pan belonged to his mother or his sister. I don't remember which, but it has something that had been in the family. And Steve had been looking for a nice cast iron pan, and he would much rather have an older one than buy something off the shelf.
Absolutely.
So he brought it home, he cleaned it up. There was a time when my in-laws visited and they saw it, and he was like, "Wow, look at how nice that looks." And so there were things strategically that we were able to put into practice. And I think that if you are someone who is in that like baby boomer generation and you have the Gen X kids, what I want to, if any of them are listening to this, what I want to implore upon you is that there will be things that your family wants of yours, but it will not be the things that you think of.
Yep.
It
Exactly.
will not be what you think of. I have my dad's whistle. He was a high school basketball coach for 20
Hmm.
years. And I wanted that, and I have it already. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
starting those conversations early about the things they do want, and whether you are in that Gen X category, that baby boomer category, you can have this conversation go both ways. So for me, it's saying to my parents who are still with us, thankfully, saying these are things that do matter to me, and these are things that don't.
Uh-huh.
And I am starting to help them with that process of downsizing, their possessions themselves. But I think that's the biggest surprise on both sides is what the things that people want that are meaningful to them are not what the other expects.
Hmm.
And I think that can help in the downsizing process, because for those who are having to do it and all the emotion that is tied to these things they've accumulated in their lives, and they're just thinking, well, nobody wants our stuff, and it's discouraging. It
Hmm.
certainly had, I know there were moments where my in-laws were discouraged because they're like, I can't believe no one wants this. And I was like, yeah, but they do want these things. Let's focus on the things. Let's focus on the cast iron pan and the things that they do want and that will be meaningful to them, that are meaningful of, the experiences that they shared with you and the time that they spent with you. Let's focus on that. And Steve would say his cooking comes from his parents. That is
Hmm.
where his love of cooking began. So that is like, that's all you need. That's the only thing you
Yeah.
need. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, as you said that, I was thinking there's a pan that my mom uses to make eggs. And it was one that her parents bought, when they didn't have much money on a farm, and they invested in this set of pans, and she still has this pan that she uses, and it definitely could get a clean on the bottom. The cooking surface is great, but I'm like, oh, I was looking at the bottom of the pan. I'm like, oh gosh, can you fix that? But like, I can see that being something that I would want. And whether I use it or not, like even hanging it up to be art, I can see that being something that would be, it just brings back so many different memories, So there's just different things like that that aren't necessarily things that you would think of, like a pan. Like, okay, it's a pan. I've got lovely cooking pans of my own, but that still has such memories to it. So it's interesting the things that you find important, that they just don't even remember those little
They don't,
moments and little
they don't,
nuggets.
yeah,
Yeah.
they don't know. And we were
Yeah.
able to, we were able to do a good job of that, where one of my nieces was like, I really want the candy dish. Has anyone
No.
asked for the candy dish? We're like, no, you can have the candy dish. One of my
Nice.
other nieces was the cookie baker for my in-laws after they were not able to do it as much. So we're like, well, you should have the rolling pin and the cookie cutters.
Yeah.
But had we not gotten them from the
Right.
3,400 square feet to the 1,200,
Yeah.
those thoughtful conversations would have been less likely and less
Right.
possible,
Because it would
because
have been a rush.
it would have been a rush. It would have been the volume. I think more than anything, it would have been the volume and the overwhelm, because I think the greatest struggle that people of my generation have, the Gen Xers have, in conveying to their parents is, this is, you're asking me to do all this work while I'm grieving the loss of you.
Right.
And you're asking me to make objective decisions, good decisions. Maybe finances are a challenge, so they do have to make it more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We had 30 days with my in-laws apartment, which was sufficient. It
Right.
was more than enough time, but not everyone has the luxury of
Right.
that. And I think it's about, what I hope to impress upon, like, my parents, and we're still working on it, if I'm being honest, is the legacy that they want to leave.
Yeah.
And I think that's the heart to heart you have to say, hey, someday you'll be gone and I'm going to be gutted. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to be devastated. And I'm going to need time to mourn. I'm going to need time to, you know, get back up and running with my family, which we're still in the middle of right now, like still trying to find our sea legs again. And it'll, with grief, it comes in waves. It'll probably be another year before we're really on completely solid ground.
Yeah.
And so
And it
how
still
could I,
comes in waves. It still
is,
comes
oh,
15
that's,
years later. I think anytime my daughter does something and I just think of like how proud, her grandpa would have been, like, ugh, I still tear up over it. It still
I
comes in
know.
waves. It's
Yeah.
just, it's never the same.
Someone sent me something that said, grief is like glitter. You
It
just
gets
just
everywhere. You
when
can't ever
it's
get
it's
rid of
everywhere. You just never know when you're gonna
it.
find it,
Yeah.
when you think you cleaned it all up, put it back in the bottle, and then you find another piece of
Yep.
it. And I was like, oh, there could not be,
Yeah.
and it is, like you said, it's the strangest things. My mother-in-law loved cardinals, and I see them in the backyard right now,
Yeah.
and that's what gets me,
Yep.
is the cardinals. So that was the most recent one. But just in terms of that, when you're going through grief, you can barely put one foot in front of the other
Right. When you're in the
to
thick of
take,
it. Oh
no, you
gosh.
think, to take care of the people who do need to be taken care of, let alone a house full of possessions, a
Yeah.
house full of stuff. And I just hope that someone who has that house full says, okay, today's the day that I'm going to take responsibility for all this stuff that I bought. And I'm going to make sure that I don't do this to my kids.
Yeah.
Um, which is a very common phrase that I hear from people my age, who are like, I
Yes.
just did that. And
Yes.
so I do think generationally we are on a positive trend.
Agreed.
But for people in my season of life, like I can barely walk 2 feet without tripping into someone who is sandwich generation, new health crises, more health issues, too much stuff in the house,
Right.
freaking out about how are they going to handle that when the time comes. And all of it's very real. It is
Yeah.
very real.
Yeah. We're just shifted a little bit on the generation from you. Like I'm an elder millennial. And so my mother-in-law is a, baby boomer. And then when her parents passed away, right? Like she had to do this for her parents' home. So I think she is that generation of like, I don't want to do this to my kids. And then obviously having to do it with
Yeah.
her spouse was a complete eye opener. So, yes, I do think we learn and make different choices based on our circumstances. But one thing I think has really helped was looking at the stuff, and if you yourself, like as the like my parents, right? If I'm asking my parents and looking from their point of view, if they don't deal with the stuff, I'm not going to know what was special to them. There's going to be so much that I'm not going to be able to discern what they really felt was important. And so if they can do that first and tell me the stories, or at least weed out the things that they don't care about, it's so much better. I actually have a story of this. I decluttered some Christmas ornaments at one point. They were like these Disney ornaments, and I gave them to a friend who was a huge Disney fan. Felt super great about it, but I posted about it on Instagram, and somebody I knew who was of my parents' age was like, "Oh, I have those same ones. They're not my favorite either, but I'm just going to let my kids deal with them someday." And I just thought, but your kids aren't going to know that they weren't important to you. They're going to think, my gosh, mom held on to these for 50 years. She must have loved these gosh darn ornaments. And I'm going to feel
Absolutely.
terrible throwing them away or getting rid of them or donating them. But she didn't even care about them. And so I think if we can help them look at that lens too and just say, like, what is important to you so that I know later, it's just another way to look at that ask these same questions, but just with a slightly different spin too, which I'm sure you did and you recommend. And I just thought of
Yeah.
that as you were talking, I was like, oh, I remember this story that came up.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wish, like, if I had a nickel for every person who said to me, I'll just let my kids deal with it, I'd be a rich lady.
Oh,
And that is gutting to me.
yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is, having walked through it. Like,
Yeah.
it really gutting to me. So as challenging as that downsizing was in 2020, was still 5 years later, I look at it as an amazing gift. And even my brother-in-law said to me, he was like, "Could you imagine if we were in the townhome right now?" I'm like, "Well, A, I can imagine because I was there.
I
And
was there.
B, yes, this
Yeah.
would be, I have a client who she was one of five
Mm.
kids, and her mother was going through cancer treatment, and in a house, like 4-bedroom house, I think, with a basement and an attic and a garage and a shed full.
Oh, yeah.
And they were taking turns going there, many of them from out of state, to care for her through this cancer treatment. When she passed away, they literally walked away from the house for a year. They just, like, the literal PTSD, and I don't use that word lightly, of that experience
Yeah.
and lack of being able to, frankly, doing the best they could, not lack of ability, but doing the best they could to care for her in that situation was what they did. And now they're, spending weekends, and even with 5 people, it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
Almost more so because now you have 5 opinions. Yeah.
yes,
I can
there is
imagine.
there is definitely that. You have 5 opinions. So, for sure. But, I had one of these moments, about like the what to do and what's special when when you're talking about the ornaments. And I had that with my mother-in-law the last week of her life. She was in hospice at that point. And I was just trying to think of I was trying to think of the things that I maybe needed to ask her about so that we could make the best decision possible about things. And the beauty of going through their whole home with them is I actually had a pretty good idea of what stuff meant something and what didn't. I think I knew it. No, not think. I know I knew it better than anyone. There was a dish in this upper cabinet. I can picture it right now that belonged to my father-in-law's sister. It wasn't a very functional dish. It was just purely sentimental, and that's why it was there. And so it wasn't going anywhere until it was the end. So I knew a lot of things. So I realized we hadn't worked through her jewelry.
Hmm.
And I said to her, I said, "So I wanted to know if you had any thoughts on how you'd like me to take care of your jewelry, what you'd like me to do." And she said, "Well, I think I've done a good job." And I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "I've given all the girls rings," and she talked about the grandchildren, and she talked about in-laws and all the girls basically, and she talked about what she had done. And we identified two people that she hadn't had the opportunity to give something to. And I said, "Would you like me to just pick something out for them?" And she's like, "That would be great." I was
Hmm.
like, I said, "Okay, I can do that." And I said, I said, "For the rest of the jewelry," I said, "do you want me to just figure it out?" She's like, "That would be great." And so I at least, yeah, it was good to know that she had done what she wanted to do with her most important jewelry, and what was left was things that were not, that did not have meaning to her, kind of like the Disney ornaments. Even
Yeah.
though they're left behind, I knew that the jewelry that was left was not of the greatest, meaning to her. She had given me a ring towards the end as well, which I immediately said, "Are you sure you don't want this to go to someone else?" And she said, "No." She said, "I want it to go to you," which was very sweet. But those are the conversations that you're 100% right, that it's not just the logistics of boxing stuff off and getting rid of it. It is the emotion that goes through people's heads, like, "Well, I think this might be important, but I have no one to ask. I
Right.
I don't know if this was important." And you know, that creates guilt in your kids. They feel bad.
Totally. Totally.
Um, we definitely had those moments towards the end, like all good decluttering coaches. I said, "Okay, we're gonna wait until the end to do sentimental stuff." And we had these boxes that were labeled
Yeah.
sentimental because someone had labeled them that way. And I was like, "Okay, guys, we're going to bring this all together." And we just started working through old newspaper clippings and old letters. And we found some things that, the four of us were taking turns reading different things. And then there was this newspaper that had been saved, and we combed it. We read all the articles, and we couldn't figure out why they saved it. We just couldn't put our finger on it. And I said, "Clearly there was something in there that was important to them, and it's okay that it's not important to us. It is okay." So we took those two boxes, like I'm doing this visually, which most people won't see, but like 12-inch high boxes, and we got it down to, a 2 or 3-inch pile, and we identified someone within the family who would be the family historian to collect these things. But that kind of thoughtful conversation only comes if you're faced with 1,200 square feet. You can only do that if you've done the work over time and you've taken the time to do it and have conversations with people who will remember. In that case, I think it was me. I
Ah,
was to be the
yeah.
the memory. So
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you before I let you go, I want to ask the question between like now that you took everything, because I can hear someone thinking this idea of like, okay, great. Well, you moved from the 3,400 square foot to the 1,200 square foot. But now, isn't everything in the 1,200 square foot the most sentimental and the most important and the most special? What happened now? Because I can see that being really challenging, knowing that you're only left with the special stuff.
yeah, you're left with I think I challenge that a little bit because I think you're left with the best of the best. And I challenge it because, we're left with the best dishes, the ones that are most functional, the quantity that they needed, the quantity of glasses. But in the kitchen, the sentimental things were few and far between. There was like a cake tester, and there was a old mandolin, and there was the rolling pin and the cookie cutters. So with the work that we did, those things that are of great importance or are of more sentimental value to the family really bubbled up. They weren't buried under 75% more kitchen equipment. So in that instance, while what they brought sentimental still was, maybe substantial, but they did their own pass on
Hmm.
it early on. And so literally they were both down to like, 2 boxes of their own sentimental type things. But for the family, from the family perspective, because again, this gets back to what is meaningful to you, what's sentimental to you will not be what was sentimental necessarily to your parents. My dad may have no real sentimental attachment about that whistle, but I sure do. He probably is like, I had 12 of them. He
Yeah.
probably doesn't have the same thought process on it. And so that's what I think the value was, because we could easily find and identify and determine if anyone was like, yeah, hey, I really wanted mom's cake tester. I wanted dad's rolling pin. I wanted dad's mandolin. Like those things were easy to find and identify and get to. The candy dish was easy to find and identify. Um, and that was just the gift.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, in about 3 to 4 days, we had done the entire apartment.
Yeah.
So, which for most of us being like from out of state, that we
What a
had to do
blessing.
this in a focused, concentrated effort. We wanted to get back to our own home so we could, quite frankly, grieve as
Yeah.
well, and enter into that season, and be able to at least close the chapter on the dealing with the stuff. So.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Oh, man. I mean, I think this is a conversation that I think needs to happen. We don't have it very often. I think none of us really want to think about the times when we will be without our family members, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I think what you just said right there of how it was such a gift during a time when no one wanted to think about this because it brings up so many emotions. You're grieving. You're in a place that you didn't expect you would be, and to have done the prep work is so amazing. So what do you think, like, as someone who was a professional organizer and is now a coach, how has that experience shifted the way that you talk to clients about that someday and that later? Like, what are the things people really need to know before we wrap up today's conversation?
Gosh. Wow. I feel like there's a whole nother hour on that. What
I
is it?
know. We'll have to have you back.
Ah, what is it that they need to know as a coach? I think that it's never too soon to start the conversation.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that how you start the conversation will matter. A little bit of what you said, like, hey, mom and dad, I'd like to know the history of the things in your home. I'd like to know what really matters to you. There will be a time someday that I know you don't want to talk about, and I don't either. I don't want to talk about it either. But there's going to be a time someday where there might be, we'll be taking care of your home, and um there might be some things that maybe I do want from your home. There's some things that I'd love to tell you about, but I'd love for you to tell me. And I think that that is a way that you go in with curiosity, that you go
Yeah.
in with interest. As I think about how, my parents are navigating like the space that they're in, the conversations I'm having with them are, hey, you know, I want to make sure that this is a space that you can stay in as long as humanly possible. And I am willing to help make that happen, and I'll come and stay because being a coach, I have laptop will travel. Like I can come and do that almost as often as is really needed. But let's make this a place that you can stay and that is safe in the future. We might not have the wider doorways, but there is a lot that we can do. And I know enough about the safety of and the way homes are designed for those who are aging in place.
Yeah.
And so having that conversation that says, I want to do what you want, which is you want to stay here. Or if what your parents want to do, hey, if you want to move, we want to help you to move. And it's just never too early to start. And a lot of my clients who tell me that they've done this with their parents, they come home and start tearing into their own home. And,
Yep.
and I did that too. After a week of prepping for that move, I would come home and look out. If it wasn't nailed down, it was leaving the
Totally. Oh my gosh, I hear you for
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Just go in with the question of like, hey, tell me about your favorite thing in the kitchen. Tell me about your favorite, item. What's one of the, most special things you own? And just asking those questions from curiosity without even if your parents are like, I am definitely not talking about death or moving or any of that. Don't
Right.
even bring that part up. Just ask the questions about the history of your family. And I think your parents will totally be on board, or your family will absolutely be on board. They want to tell the stories. They just don't think you want to hear them.
Right. That's so true. So well
Yeah.
said.
Awesome. All right. Well, Amy, tell people where they can find out more about you.
Oh, well, that would be great. I am simplyenough.net. And on Instagram and Facebook, you can find Simply Enough Amy. And so those are the main places that I hang out. And I would absolutely love to hang out with them there and take questions there. So send me a DM, send me an email on my website. Happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have a post for this episode. So just join the
Good.
conversation. We'll both be on there. That'll be great. Yeah.
That'll be
Awesome.
fun. I love
Yeah.
it.
Very fun. All right. Well, I always close every episode with 3 rapid fire questions. You've probably answered the first one, but I'm going to ask you again now that you've gone through a different transition. What does clutter free mean to you as number 1?
Less, just less of all of it, less of all the busyness in a business, the non-needle moving activities, like getting laser focused on what things you need to do to build your own business. And so if someone's thinking, I don't even know where to start, you start with your one offer and you start with that thing you can do well. And you write that down and say, this is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to sell. This is the kind of stuff that lights me up. And you just like get out of your own way and start. And then on the life and declutter side, I would say it's just start as well. And it's start with one drawer. It is start with your car. It is start with your bag. It is just get out of your own way. And that's so much of the coaching that I do is just getting people to start and take action and move forward. So, and that means eliminating and subtracting all the things that aren't moving the needle forward.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Number 2, even though it's a hard season, I know for you right now, what is something that is making you happy right now or in this season?
Oh, it's skiing. It's skiing,
I
and
knew that was going to be it.
yeah, I love it. I do love it. My mother-in-law was with us after my father-in-law passed away, and I was booking a trip that I'm taking in a few weeks. And I told her, I said, hey, I was like, I booked this trip. I'm going to go skiing in February. She goes, I think that's awesome. She's like,
Oh,
you should go. And at that point, I didn't know what the months ahead were
right.
going to be for any of us. Tomorrow is not promised, but I still remember that smile on her face when I told her I was taking that trip. And
Mm,
so it's a good decision. And so
so fun. Where
skiing.
are you going? Where are you going?
Well, I am going to Telluride on that trip, and
Nice.
it's a women's ski clinic for 3 days.
Fun.
So it's going to be great instruction for 3 days, and I'll probably love skiing even more till when it's done. So
That
I'm very
sounds
excited.
awesome.
Yeah.
How fun. How
Yeah.
fun. All right. And then number 3, what is one small step you recommend listeners take today?
I think it's think about what you want your legacy to be to your kids. Because you might have some parents that you're fighting like tooth and nail to get them to even think about doing anything, and they're just like, no, we're not doing it. I mean, someone's listening to this episode going, this is all great, but there is not a snowball's chance in heck that I'm going to be able to talk to my parents about it. And that might be true. And it might be that they're not open to it. But if you have a family, or you have a spouse, or you have kids, again, tomorrow is not promised for any of us. And so you can think about doing that work and setting that example in your own home. I wish I weren't hearing of, 40 and 50-year-olds who are getting cancer and things like that, but that really does happen. And so we do tend to like focus on other people's stuff, right? We can see our husband's hat collection. We can see our kids' toy collection. And then we forget, oh yeah, I've got a whole closet full of stuff too.
Right.
So I think that if what you're hearing in this is discouragement because you don't think you could have those conversations, actions speak much louder than words, and much more is caught than taught. And the reason the people in my family ask me to help them is because they saw I did it. And so you're going to open up some curiosity from them. It might not be in your timeline, but it is, that would be my advice, because I know there's somebody who's like, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's always best to start with you. Yeah, for sure.
It is.
Yourself.
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah. So good, Amy. Well, thank you again for sharing your experience and helping us, see that, give us some tips for what we can do in our own lives. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. That was a really meaningful conversation. And the thing that really stuck out with me was Amy's reminder that the things your family will want are not necessarily the things you expect. And the things that you ask for from your parents might not be the things that they expect you to ask for, and they might not even know you want. So it might not be the china cabinet, right? Or that expensive furniture. It could be something as simple as your dad's whistle from coaching basketball, like Amy has for her dad. It might be the cast iron pot that connects someone to a memory of cooking together. And obviously, I talked about a pan that my mom has that has a lot of special memories for me. So there are things that maybe we don't know that we want yet, but just start having those conversations. I really appreciated the gentle push that if your parents aren't ready to have these conversations, you can still lead by example. You can start with your own home. You can start thinking about the legacy you want to leave for your children and your family. Because as Amy said, it's more caught than taught. I love how she said that. Remember that. It's more caught than taught. But I would love to know what landed for you. So come tell me over on Instagram. I'm at wannabeclutterfree, and we'll have a conversation going on over there. And if this episode helped you, could you please take 30 seconds to leave a review and a rating for the show? It really does help other families find the show, makes me feel good, and just makes me know which conversations I need to keep bringing you more of. All right. Thank you so much to Amy, of course, for joining us and being willing to share her personal, tender experience and just letting us learn from her example as well. And you can find her at simplyenough.net or on Instagram and Facebook at simplyenoughammy. All the links will be in the show notes at wannabeclutterfree.com/298. I'll see you back here next week for another great episode, so make sure you don't miss out. Until next time, start those conversations early, lead by example in your own home, and remember that it is never too soon to think about what really matters. I believe in you, and I know you can do anything you set your mind to. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wanna Be Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.